All right, get ready because today we're doing a deep dive on some wild crypto heists. This one is so crazy, it sounds like something out of a movie.
Definitely.
We're talking over $230 million in Bitcoin.
Wow.
Stolen from one person.
Yeah.
All because of some really smart social engineering and a 20-year-old criminal mastermind.
It's a story that really shows the dark side of the crypto world, and we're going to break it all down.
Okay.
It's based on this YouTube video
All right.
from CNA. It's called Malone LAM's Alleged U.S. $230 Crypto Scam, CNA Explains.
So this story is all about Malone LAM. He's from Singapore. And he came to the U.S. on a 90-day tourist visa. No job, no permanent address. He was just visiting. But somehow he managed to pull off one of the biggest crypto heists in American history.
Hey.
I mean, how do you even begin to do something like that?
Well, that's what makes this case so fascinating. It wasn't about, just hacking in the usual way. LAM used online aliases like Anne Hathaway and Dollar. He was like a master manipulator. He knew that the easiest way to get into a system is to use the human element.
So you're saying it's all about social engineering?
Exactly.
Playing on people's trust, their vulnerabilities.
Right. And in this case, LAM had an accomplice, this guy named John Deal Serrano. He went by Versace God and @Skidstar online.
Okay, I see where this is going. Just those names kind of give you a clue about what they were after, right? The lifestyle.
Yeah.
And they picked a target who could fund that lifestyle.
Right. A high net worth investor from way back in the early days of cryptocurrency.
You'd think someone like that would know better than to fall for a scam, wouldn't you?
You'd think so, right. Someone who's been around, seen the potential pitfalls of the internet.
Right.
But that's the thing about social engineering. It can work on anyone if it's done right.
Yeah.
So LAM and Serrano started by bombarding this investor with fake alerts.
Oh, like unauthorized Google account access type alerts.
Yes, exactly.
So they're making him think someone is always trying to hack him.
Right. And to make it even more convincing, they use proxies and VPNs.
Ah, okay. So VPN, that's a virtual private network, right? It's like a digital mask that hides your real location.
Exactly.
So it makes it look like these login attempts are coming from like Russia or China or someplace far away.
Right. Which makes it seem way more serious, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So you've got this investor who's already dealing with the whole complicated world of crypto, and then he starts getting all these warnings. He must have felt like his whole digital life was under attack.
Exactly.
He probably was desperate for a solution, right?
Right, totally primed and ready for someone to swoop in and save the day.
Okay, so that's where LAM and Serrano come in.
Right. Posing as Google support staff.
Oh, wow.
Offering to help secure his account. And sadly, the victim fell for it.
He gave them access to his account?
He did.
Oh, man. That's bad.
It is. But that was just the first step. Okay. With access to his OneDrive and Gmail, LAM found out that the victim was keeping all his crypto records on Gemini.
Gemini, that's a popular exchange platform, right?
Yeah.
So now they knew exactly where to find it.
Yeah.
But they still didn't have access to the cryptocurrency itself, right?
Right.
Just the records.
So what did they do? They pretended to be Gemini's security team this time. They told him his accounts were compromised. They actually convinced the victim to transfer, get this, about $3 million worth of crypto into a wallet controlled by LAM as a security measure.
Wait, so they got millions of dollars from him before they even got full access to his main holdings. That's bold.
It really is, isn't it?
Yeah.
But they weren't done. Next, they told the victim to install this remote desktop connection program, again, pretending it was for security reasons.
So this program gave LAM and Serrano control of the victim's computer.
Total real-time control. And get this whole thing was going down while Serrano was actually on the phone with the victim.
No way.
Keeping him distracted, making him feel like everything was fine. It was so carefully planned.
It's just like in those heist movies, right? You've got the con artist keeping the victim occupied while the accomplice cleans out the safe.
Exactly.
So with control of his computer, LAM and Serrano were able to get the victim's private keys. Those are like the super long passwords that give you access to your Bitcoin wallets, right?
Yeah, if you have the private key, you control the Bitcoin.
And they took off with over 4,100 Bitcoin using those keys.
That's right.
Over $230 million at the time.
And the craziest thing is, they left a trail. There are screen recordings showing every step with LAM's Anne Hathaway and Serrano's Versace God usernames right there on the screen.
Talk about incriminating evidence. They basically documented the whole crime.
Right.
But what did they do with all that money?
Hide it. Not quite.
Okay, so what do they do?
Well, remember those online aliases?
Right, versus
It turns out that wasn't just a username. It was like a lifestyle goal, and they had the means to make it a reality.
this is where the spending spree begins, right?
Oh, yeah. It's about to get extravagant.
All right, let's hear about how they blew through over $230 million.
Get ready for luxury cars, mansions, and enough champagne to fill a swimming pool.
Okay, I'm all ears. Hit me with the details.
All right, so first up, the cars.
Right.
Lam went on this crazy luxury car buying spree. He got like 31 high-end vehicles, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Porsches, you name it.
31 cars. That's insane.
Yeah, and some of them, they were custom built and worth like $3 million each.
That's not a collection. That's a whole dealership.
Right.
Did he even have time to drive them all?
Well, as of September 24th, they still haven't found 22 of those cars. So who knows? Maybe he's got this giant garage somewhere. Maybe he just lost track.
It's like he was playing a video game with unlimited money. What about Serrano? Was he keeping up with all this crazy spending?
Oh, yeah, he was right there with him.
Yeah.
He rented this house in California for $47,500 a month.
$47,500 a month. My rent for like the next 10 years wouldn't even equal 1 month in that place.
Right. It's just mind-boggling how much money they were throwing around.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even the only place.
Right.
LAM had a bunch of luxury rentals in LA and Miami.
Okay.
One of them cost $68,000 a month.
That's just obscene. Did they just spend all their time going from mansion to mansion and driving these crazy expensive cars?
Pretty much. They were also hanging out at these nightclubs in Miami and LA, dropping like $500,000 every single night.
$500,000 per night.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to have a good time, but that's a whole other level. It almost feels like they wanted to get caught, you know? Like they were trying to be flashy. Is that a thing with scammers?
You know, it's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Every case is different, but I think there's often a psychological element to it. It's not just about enjoying the money. It's about the validation. Like, they need to feel powerful and in control.
It feeds their ego. Makes them feel invincible.
Exactly. Or maybe it's a way of just denying what they've done. If they're always surrounded by luxury, it's easier to ignore the guilt.
That's a really interesting take.
Yeah.
So it's like the self-destructive urge driven by something deeper than just wanting stuff. But of course, it all came crashing down eventually.
It did.
So how did the party end? What led to their capture?
Well, Serrano got arrested at the Los Angeles airport after a trip to the Maldives with his girlfriend. Even masterminds need a vacation, I guess.
I guess so.
But his girlfriend, you know, she realized how serious this was.
Okay.
She tipped off LAM about the arrest.
Wow, talk about a betrayal. Yeah. So Lam knew the police were on to him.
He did. He tried to cover his tracks, deleted his Telegram account, but it was too late.
Okay.
He got arrested in Miami the same day as Serrano.
So they both got caught. What happened next? Did they go on trial?
Well, Lam was charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud and money laundering. This was in a U.S. district court in Florida. The information we have mostly focuses on Lam's case.
Right.
So we don't really know the specifics about Serrano's charges.
I guess they were working together, so probably similar charges, right?
Probably, yeah. Anyway, Lam appeared before a judge in Washington, D.C. for a pretrial hearing to talk about evidence. And here's the interesting part. He actually requested a speedy trial.
A speedy trial?
Yeah.
That's unusual. Why would he want that?
It's tough to say for sure. Maybe his lawyers think they've got a stronger case if the trial happens quickly. Or maybe it's a strategy, you know? A way to try and control the situation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What did his lawyer say about all this?
Well, his lawyer, Scott Armstrong, he said, you know, Mr. Lam is 20 years old and unfortunately caught up in a very complicated case. We will vigorously defend him.
Okay, so it sounds like they're not denying that he was involved. They're going to play up his age and how complicated this whole thing was.
Yeah. It's possible they'll try to argue that he was manipulated or influenced by others. But no matter what their defense is, Lam's facing some serious consequences here.
Right.
For each offense, he could get up to 20 years in jail and a fine of up to $250,000. Or even twice the amount he got from the scams.
Wow, that's a long time from living the high life to potentially decades behind bars.
It is a big change.
It really shows you that even in the crypto world, actions have consequences.
Absolutely. And it raises some important questions about the vulnerabilities in the system and how hard it is to recover stolen funds.
You know, hearing all the details of this case, it makes me a little nervous about my own online security. If a high net worth investor like this guy could fall for such a sophisticated scam, What hope do the rest of us have?
That's a valid concern. But remember, awareness is the first step to protection. The more you understand about these scams, the better you can protect yourself.
Okay, so let's talk about some practical tips. What can we actually do to avoid becoming the next victim of a crypto heist?
All right, first of all, be really careful about anyone contacting you out of the blue, especially if they say they're from a company you do business with. Legitimate companies rarely do that, asking for sensitive information.
So if someone calls claiming to be from your bank, or in this case, like Google or Gemini, don't just take their word for it.
Right, exactly. Always verify their identity yourself. Look up the company's contact information on their official website and reach out to them directly. Don't use the contact info they give you because it could be fake.
That makes sense. What about those alerts we talked about, those unauthorized access alerts? How can you tell if they're real or just part of a scam? Because sometimes they look so official.
They do. Scammers are getting really good at making them look real. But pay close attention to the sender's email address. Look for any misspellings, weird characters, or a domain name that doesn't match the company's website.
So like if it says Gemini.com instead of Gemini.com, that's a red flag.
Exactly.
Got it.
And whenever possible, don't click links in emails or text messages. Go directly to the company's website or app to check for alerts.
Good point. It's so easy to just click without thinking. In this case, the victim gave away his security codes. What's the most important thing to remember about passwords and codes?
Never, ever share them with anyone, no matter how convincing they sound.
Right.
No real company is going to ask you for that over the phone, in an email, or through a text.
So even if someone says they're from tech support and they need my password, it's a scam.
Absolutely. Hang up the phone, close the email, whatever you need to do.
Okay. Good to know. What other red flags should we be looking for?
Be careful if anyone is trying to pressure you or make you feel like you need to act immediately. Scammers like to use scare tactics, like those fake security alerts, to get you to make a quick decision without thinking it through.
So if someone's rushing you, that's a sign to slow down and really assess the situation.
Exactly. Take your time, take a deep breath, and if you're not sure, talk to a friend or family member and get a second opinion.
Don't let fear take over.
Right.
Any other tips?
Yes. Turn on two-factor authentication everywhere you can.
Right. That's where you have to enter code from your phone.
Yeah.
Right. In addition to your password.
Exactly. It's an extra layer of security.
Yeah. It can be a bit annoying sometimes, but it's worth it. What else?
Stay informed about the latest scams. Knowledge is power.
Right.
The more you know about how these scammers operate, the better you'll be at spotting them.
So it's about being proactive, educating ourselves about the threats out there. Where can we find good information about this stuff, like reliable information about cybersecurity and scams?
Oh, yeah, there are some great resources out there. The Federal Trade Commission, they have a website with tons of information on scams and identity theft.
Okay, the FTC, good to know.
And the Better Business Bureau, the BBB, and the National Cybersecurity Alliance, those are all great places to start.
Perfect. We'll include links to those in the show notes for this episode. So we've talked a lot about how to prevent these scams, but what happens if someone does become a victim? What are the chances of getting their money back?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Cryptocurrency is still pretty new,
Right.
And law enforcement is still catching up when it comes to these kinds of crimes.
So it's a bit like the Wild West out there.
Kind of, yeah. It can be really hard to track down these criminals and recover stolen funds.
Right.
Because of the way cryptocurrency works.
But in this case, they did catch LAM and Serrano. So does that mean there's hope for victims to get their money back?
It's definitely possible. The FBI seized a lot of their assets.
Oh, okay.
Like those fancy cars, watches, maybe even some cryptocurrency.
So maybe the victim could get some of his money back from those seized assets.
Maybe, but it's a long process. Recovering stolen cryptocurrency can be really complicated and there are no guarantees.
Yeah, it makes sense. The legal system is still figuring all this out.
Exactly. It's a rapidly changing area of law.
Right.
But one thing's for sure, prevention is the best strategy.
Absolutely.
The more we educate ourselves and protect our digital stuff, the less likely we are to become victims in the first place.
Couldn't agree more. This deep dive has been really interesting.
Yeah.
But also kind of scary,
I know what you mean.
It really makes you think about how vulnerable we are in this digital age. Even with all the technology we have, people can still find ways to trick us.
Yeah, it's true.
It's a good reminder that the oldest scams can still work if they're presented in a new and clever way.
You're right.
So we've covered a lot here. the details of the heist, the psychology of the scammers, and some practical tips for staying safe. Before we wrap things up, any key takeaways you want to highlight for our listeners?
It's crazy, this whole case makes you think about the image of cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Like it's supposed to be this super secure, decentralized system.
Right.
But then you see how easily these guys exploited the human element and just walked away with a fortune.
It definitely challenges that idea, doesn't it? Yeah.
And I think it shows how, even though the technology might be complicated and secure, the human factor is always going to be a weak spot.
It happens all the time, right? Not just with crypto, but with all kinds of online platforms. No matter how good the security is, someone can always find a way to use our trust against us.
It's like a law of the internet, almost.
Yeah.
As we create these complex systems, we also create opportunities for people who want to take advantage. And a lot of times, the simplest methods are the most effective.
Yeah, it's kind of scary when you think about it. We've talked about those practical tips, being careful about who you talk to, verifying identities, strong passwords, two-factor authentication. But beyond that, how can we become more aware of these scams? Do we have to be suspicious of everything?
That's a good question. I don't think it's about being paranoid. It's more about having a healthy skepticism,
Okay.
thinking things through before you jump in.
So slow down. Don't let fear or excitement cloud your judgment.
Exactly. And remember, anyone can be a target. We tend to think, oh, that would never happen to me.
Yeah.
But these scammers, they're really good at what they do. They know how to play on our weaknesses.
It makes you realize that no matter how much you think you know, you can still be tricked. So how do we protect ourselves? Do we all need to become cybersecurity experts?
Well, it definitely helps to understand the basics, but you don't have to be an expert. It's more about awareness, staying up to date on the latest threats, and just having good security habits.
So being proactive, taking responsibility for our own digital safety.
Exactly. Don't make it easy for the scammer.
Right.
Strong passwords, two-factor authentication, being careful about what you click on, what information you share, all those little things add up.
It's like building up your defenses, making yourself less vulnerable.
That's a great way to put it.
This whole conversation has really changed the way I think about online security. It's not just about money. It's about protecting your whole digital life.
Yeah, it's a big responsibility.
But it's also empowering,
I agree. The more you know, the better prepared you are.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive. I hope our listeners learned a lot, too.
Me too. It's a good reminder that the crypto world, with all its potential, can also be pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
We need to be careful out there. But if we're aware, educated, and a little skeptical, we can manage the risks.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's about it for our deep dive. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay.
If these scams work by taking advantage of human nature, how can we create a digital world that's less vulnerable? What can we do, both individually and as a society, to make things safer?
That's a great question, and it's one that we all need to think about.
All right, well, on that note, we'll leave you to ponder that. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe online.